Hello everyone and a warm welcome back to True to Form, your brand new YouTube show produced by Racing TV. On this week's edition then we have an Antepost preview of the Ryanair Chase at Cheltenham, only 10 weeks away now. Frightening, isn't it, where the time goes? But we'll have a look at a couple of performances from over the weekend, which could have a bearing on that Grade 1 event on the Thursday of the Cheltenham Festival. We'll have a name to note for you as well. Well, there's one name on the lips of most people, despite the spectacular array of stars that we saw during the festive period, and that came at Kempton. More on that later. We'll have two to note for you for your trackers as well, horses that really took the eye and come out very well on the data, the race IQ data. We'll have a couple of races for you to tread carefully with, horses that might well be overvalued and overrated by the market the next time they run, after they've managed to win over the festive period. A couple of horses from Ireland as well that caught the eye, a little bit under the radar perhaps, and performed with great credit on the race IQ figures at Limerick over the weekend. And we'll wind up with a preview of the Saturday action at Sandown and probably Wincanton. A couple of bets there for you to hopefully see you through the weekend okay there. But let's first get on with the Antepost angle, and it's the Ryanair Chase. So with William Hill offering their concession of non-runner no bet on all Cheltenham Festival Antepost races from January the 1st, the Ryanair Chase could be a good race to dig a little deeper into. The three main protagonists in the market as we stand all ran over the festive period. Banbridge winning a King George in scintillating fashion. Gaelic Warrior underwhelming a little with his performance at Leopardstown behind Solness, very well ridden, but Gaelic Warrior easy to back and couldn't really land a glove on Solness. And then finally, of course, the Galopin de Champs scintillating performance in the Savills Chase, but Factor File finishing second after proving quite keen and not quite seeing out the race as well as his stablemate. And it is the last of that trio, Factor File, which I quite like for this race. I think William Hill will have him in at 5-1, non-runner no bet. I think that's fair for a horse of his ability. I really can't see him going and putting it up to Galopin de Champs in a Gold Cup. I just don't see that test as particularly the best sort of avenue or vehicle really for Factor File to show his best. I think he's a horse that travels very strongly. He's exuberant through his races. He's a powerful mover. He jumps well, his length's gained, and his time that he gets away from his fences is very good, very slick, very economic, which suggests that he's better suited by a shorter distance and a more of a test of speed rather than stamina. And just the way that he tanks along through his races, I really do believe that he's going to be a better horse dropped in trip where that speed can be used to great effect rather than slogging away over trips in excess of 3 miles against dyed-in-the-wool stayers like Galopin de Champs. And if he's fitting well, then he's certainly going to take all the beating come Gold Cup week. So I like Factor File for this race. I think 5-1 is very fair. It's certainly non-runner no bet with him having dual entries. And it just looks to me like the classy horse. I mean, the way that he won the John Durkan as well and tanked through that race over 2.5 shows that he has no lack of pace. I think he's getting quicker as he gets older. I think that's the ideal race for him, the intermediate race as such, the Ryanair Chase. Just one other that I thought was a little bit overpriced, and William Hill only put L'Empresse in at 10-1, and there's 20-1 available in the village. I thought that was a really good comeback effort from Venetia Williams' charge. I know he's going to be, pushing 10 by the time he gets to March, or he will be 10 by the time he gets to March, and that could be a little bit of an issue, but he really has got a few miles on the clock, this horse, and you look back through his form at Cheltenham, even over 2.5 miles when the mud's flying, and he really does have an excellent record at the track. I wouldn't be surprised to see him drop in trip here, certainly if Banbridge stays and goes for something like a Gold Cup and is quite aggressively campaigned by his owners and connections. I think L'Empresse would be keen to avoid going into the Galopin de Champs Banbridge camp and tackling them again. I think he might be much better suited by dropping back in trip and forcing it over the 2.5 at Cheltenham or the 2.5 of the Ryanair. So 20-1 for him, speculative bet for him, but I think Factor File, solid 5-1, non-runner no bet, makes plenty of appeal. Well, the action across the water in Ireland was also pretty exemplary and scintillating, and three horses that really caught my eye over the last few days are thus. Bioluminescence, you get a few points for her name in Scrabble, wouldn't you? She won the Grade 2 Dawn Run Novices Chase at Limerick under Derek O'Connor for Gavin Cromwell. 2 mile 6 affair on yielding to soft ground. She's a 6-year-old by Walk in the Park, and this was a brilliant debut over fences on the numbers. The overall time figure was exemplary. She was 3.5 seconds quicker than anything else on the card on the final circuit over fences. Her length gained during the race was 12, her jump index was 7.6, and her finishing speed percentage really did show that she quickened up in the straight and clocked 108.95%. She was described as a ferocious galloper, which I thought was a great turn of phrase by Derek O'Connor. She's a real sizable, imposing mare who's going to stay further. I think she could take quite high rank in mares races and even open company as the season wears on. I was very taken with her performance. Second horse to catch the eye was McClory, who had already made the tracker courtesy of that encouraging performance at Punchestown. When he followed that up, dropped in trip by Emmett Mullins, his trainer, back to 2 miles at Limerick, and that was perhaps seen as an issue by one or two who felt that he looked, a staying horse in the making. Certainly I felt that he would be seen to best effect over 2.5 miles and perhaps beyond. He looked a little raw when he hit the front, but he did quicken ever so well. I know he beat inferior rivals on this occasion, and the race probably wasn't quite as strong as the one won by St James's Gate at Punchestown, but yet again his jumping was excellent. A lengths gained figure of 15, a jump index pushing on 8. And he just looked a lot sharper than he did at Punchestown in the closing stages. I think that's 4 runs for him over hurdles now. He's a horse very much to keep on side and remain in the tracker. Third and finally, Midnight Our Fred is a horse that really caught the eye in a very competitive and valuable handicap chase at Leopardstown over the Christmas period. He's only a 7-year-old. He's been placed 3 times at Cheltenham over various distances. I thought this was a really good performance from the front here. You could say that he got it easy, got an easy lead or whatever, but there was 115 rivals in this race. It was one of those typically competitive handicap chases at Leopardstown. His finishing speed percentage suggests that he was very, very well ridden by his conditional rider, £5 claimer. And I just like the performance here. He goes on good ground, he goes on soft ground, and the distances he gained at his last 3 fences, well, it was around about 6 lengths. His lengths gained through the race were 22.83. And his jumping index was 9.8 out of a possible 10. So, extraordinary figures really, and even Craig Grable Horwood might have given him a 10 for this performance. So I really liked Midnight Our Fred. I'd certainly be adding him to my tracker as well as McClory and Bioluminescence. Let's get on with those tracker horses then, as promised. And we'll start off with the Formby Novices Hurdle at Aintree. This was run on Boxing Day. A Grade 1 won by Potter's Charm, who put up a really good performance to score that day. There's the third horse I really like, Good and Clever, who's been placed now in a couple of pretty useful races. He debuted over hurdles at Newbury behind Regent Stroll and posted a really good performance that day. There was a fair bit of stable confidence behind his chance. I like the way that he went about it that day. He had no right really to get so close at Liverpool, just finishing 7 lengths behind Potter's Charm. He ran past Celtic Dino and Country Mile, who've both been in great form in the closing stages of that race. But it was his jumping, I think, which let him down a little bit. His length gained were minus 4.43. His jump index on the Race IQ data was just 6.5. And his finishing speed position was 98.29 as well. So it just all goes to show that things didn't quite happen for Good and Clever that day. He didn't jump with the same efficiency that he did at Newbury, where his figures were very good. And I would just put this race down to the fact that the ground wasn't genuinely soft enough for him. I think he can't have it deep enough, Good and Clever. I think there's a good race to be won with him going forward this year. Right, second to follow is Bluey, who's a mare that managed to win for Emma Lavelle on the first race on the card, I think, on Boxing Day at Wincanton. Made all to win that 2-mile hurdle, came out of the gloom and stayed on very, very strongly. She's from the same family as Mystic Theatre, Morella Royale, so very nicely bred. Took her 5 wins to win her first point, but she did win a bumper at Plumpton. And I just like the way that she jumped here. The lengths gained was 16 lengths on her rivals. The jump index was 7.4. And I thought she was very effectively ridden. It was a very well-judged ride as well, because her finishing speed percentage was 99.51. And I think she's going to be a really nice horse going forward. Be very disappointed if she didn't take quite a high rank in 1 or 2 decent mares races as the season wears on. Right, third, but by no means least, this is Nardaran, a juvenile racing in the colours of Sir Martin Broughton, along with his friends. Son of Volgeist, who ran on the 27th of Kempton and ran 4th. He only finished 4th of the 7 runners behind Knight Templar in that Kempton juvenile event. It was a slowly run affair. He was too keen. I don't think he was suited by the way the race was run, and his jumping index was really poor, 5.6 for a Paul Nicholls youngster, a novice or a juvenile horse to jump that poorly is very rare. They're usually brilliantly schooled at Ditchy. I think there's more to come from him once he sharpens up a little bit. He's just had the one run in France over 12 furlongs. I think he'll be a lot sharper for this experience. I'll be disappointed if he doesn't build on that and become a winner in the not too distant future. Right, let's get on to our horses that we must tread carefully with going forward. Well, racing's a sport that likes to shoot itself in the foot and likes to accommodate plenty of doom and gloom merchants, of which I'm admittedly a primary candidate, but you could do nothing but savour some of the fare that was served to us over the festive period. Some of the races that we saw and the horses that we saw in action really did whet the appetite for the season ahead, and a list as long as your arm really I've got here of quality horses that we saw: Potter's Charm, the Jukebox Man, Banbridge, the Big Westerner, Niche Haas, Solness, Romeo Coolio, Bioluminescence, Impere Par, Galopin de Chambre, Home by the Lee, the New Lion. I'm not even mentioned Better Days Ahead, and indeed Sir Gino. And it was his performance, I thought, at Kempton on the Friday of Christmas which really took the headlines. Yes, it was all about Constitution Hill that week, and it was great to see him back in action, and his defeat of Lossiemouth was very commendable. But Sir Gino really did put Ballyburn to the sword in that Grade 2 Wayward Lad Novices Chase, and very interesting to compare his stats and his race IQ data with that of Majborough, who looks to be the leading Arkle hope for Willie Mullins. Sir Gino managed to gain 10 lengths on his rivals with his round of jumping, or his 2 rounds of jumping, and a jump index of 8 on the race IQ data. Majborough gained 15.21 and his jump index was 9.4, so he's achieved arguably a little bit more on his chasing debut than Sir Gino did. Now Sir Gino's around even money, Majborough's 9-2, so I'll leave it with you where you think the value lies. Their overall speed figures were pretty reminiscent as well. Their circuit times, well, Sir Gino was 3 seconds quicker than any other chase on the card over that circuit, which was very commendable given the strength of the chase that was run later on. And Majborough was 4 lengths quicker than anything on that Fairy House card. Their time in the jumping envelope was very similar. Their speed recovery time was very similar as well. Majborough arguably a little bit sharper, all but the 5th last, which he managed to mess a little bit. But other than that, he was pretty exemplary. So he could be where the value lies looking at that Arkle market just now. Fascinating to see where they both go next, and we look forward to that matchup on the first day of the Cheltenham Festival. It really does whet the appetite. Right, let's get on to our tracker horses for this week. Our Tread Carefully feature begins with a race at Wincanton on the 26th of December, won by Iope Calange, who was a rare shaft of light, if you will, for Paul Nicholls over the Christmas period. His horses really did underperform and were largely underwhelming. He did have a couple of winners, this lad and also in the Waterside at Newbury, but this lad's victory owed more to the tremendous riding ability of Freddie Gingell, who managed to galvanise him to victory with a run after the last. It was a slow motion finish though. The finishing speed percentage was just 84.78 and the overall time was very modest as well. The circuit time was 8.6 slower than anything else on the card, and it was desperate stuff. Grim watching really if you watched it from the turn in at Wincanton. They were going up and down on the one spot, and there was a couple of shadows that went past at one point. So this half-length defeat of Stands the Man in the 0 to 125 doesn't amount to much, and could definitely be a form to take on in the near future. The second Tread to Carefully horse is Kite Time, a filly trained by Nikki Henderson, who managed to win well at Kempton, and she's beautifully bred. She's won 2 of her 3 starts in French bumpers. Her dam, Vere Follette, was a half-sister to champion hurdle winner Epitante, so it's a family that Nikki knows really well. The overall time, though, was very modest for a race of this nature, and the circuit time was 25 lengths slower than Constitution Hill. Well, that's not a great surprise, you might say, but the lengths gained in jumping by Kite Time was minus 2.34, and the race IQ jumping index was just 6. This is a horse that is very much open to progress, but he's going to be very well touted and very well hyped going forward, and will probably be a short price, this filly, as she progresses through her career. So whilst I'm not saying that she can't be a very useful horse, and she's very much open to improvement and significant improvement at that, she could just be one just to take on at a short price as she steps up through the ranks. So let's turn our attention to future action then, starting at Cheltenham on New Year's Day. Good card there, and that features the Relkeel hurdle. I like the claims here of Salva, who was third, of course, in the Triumph hurdle behind Majborough, form that's working out pretty soundly already this year. I like the fact that he comes out of the Jerry Fielden hurdle, so I think this step up in trip will be ideal for him. That was a very truly run handicap at Newbury. It's thrown up 4 winners already. It looks a really rock solid piece of form, and Salva tackles 2.5 miles here with a bit of cut in the ground, and as we've seen already this year, last year's juveniles look an above average bunch, and hopefully he can prove that on New Year's Day. Let's get to Sandown then for a couple of selections, starting off with the 225, which is a listed hurdle for mares, and Aston Martini is the pick here for Nikki Henderson. I see that Nico de Boinville's already jocked up on this filly, and she was very unlucky not to win a banger on her comeback. 4 winners have come out of that race, so it looks very good form. And of course, she hails from the Jerry Fielden form line as well, so that's encouraging. I think she'll really appreciate this step back up to 2.5 with a bit of cut in the ground. Although she's got some ground to find on 1 or 2 higher rated rivals in this race, I think she can bridge that gap. I think conditions should be ideal for her. An hour and 10 minutes later then, in the finale on the card, I like Navajo Indy, who won the aforementioned Jerry Fielder from Queen's Gamble in really good fashion. He must have soft ground, this horse, so if it doesn't rain, I don't think Tom Simmons will risk him. But I do think the Betfair hurdle's on the agenda as well, and there could be a race to keep him in mind for, providing he goes well at Sandown on Saturday. I think he's around 6-1. If he runs, I think that's definitely a price worth taking. Quickly over to Wincanton then for the final selection, the 12.23 at Wincanton. It's a maiden hurdle. It's not a very illustrious affair, but I think it can go the way of JJ Moon, who gained nearly 10 lengths and jumping behind Prophecia when second here last time, and a jumping index of 7.9 on the Race IQ stats. I think that is very encouraging, that data, and hopefully back at Wincanton he can get his head in front. All that remains then is for me to wish you all a very happy new year. Thanks very much for watching this week, and we'll join you soon. Bye for now.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.